Good evening, everyone. Time for episode 33 of The Drums of Doom. It's November 2nd, 2020, starting off on page 422, a chapter entitled The Arena. Okay. Let's see how we do here. The sun rose on the seventh day, and as was preordained, the slave master came with a large host. Armed with clubs and staves, Carmen and her rangers were shackled together one after another. Tarek could not bear the orc's foul touch, and so he struggled, but his efforts were useless, because an orc shaman had cast a spell of weakness upon them. Once their bonds were secure, they were led past the hounds and out of the prison. Walking briskly, a second detachment of guards soon joined them, escorting them through the halls of Faradmore for over a mile. The last leg of their journey was along a wide thoroughfare, 50 feet wide, with arched ceilings of comparable height. Countless passageways large enough to accommodate giants branched away from it at regular intervals along its entire length. Its walls were painted in varying styles, depicting both the primitive animal images of the orcs and the sophisticated artistry of the Dak Alfar. The floor was well-polished stone, immaculate and perfectly level. They followed this road yet another mile, past incredible vaulted cathedrals, public baths, and even a mess hall filled with thousands of feasting soldiers. 50 paces beyond the arch of the cafeteria door was a titanic portal, built with beams carved from massive tree trunks, hinged and riveted with adamant. Its double doors stood over 40 feet in height and 20 feet in width. A pair of giants stood guard beside it, armored in mail and holding massive spears. "Open the gates," the slave master commanded. Leaning their weapons against the wall, the giants lifted the beam that barred the door, grasped steel rings large enough to surround 2 men, and pulled. The doors were heavy, even for them, but they were equal to the task, and the way was soon open. The roar of cheers filled the way beyond the portal, the road coming to an abrupt end 100 yards ahead. Another set of doors, like the last, ended the passage, and it was clear that they had entered the Colosseum. Spectators mingled in the very hallway with them, climbing stairs into stadium seats or buying food and drink from vendors. The slave master then led them down a dark side passage, past more guards and a handful of hounds posted beside closed doors. The crowd's fervent cheers continued, so loudly that the sound passed through the stone walls of the place, vibrating with excitement and echoing through every chamber. They walked downstairs and up again, through long curved passageways and beyond, until they came to an expansive holding area, contained within walls barred with steel and with windows opening into the gigantic arena. A barred gate served as the cell arena's door along the far wall. Several prisoners had already been left there, and Dow and Kalor were among them. 2 guards stood watch by the cell entrance and acted swiftly to open it when the slave master appeared. One by one, their shackles were removed, and they were shoved into the cage. "Armor and weapons have been provided to you," the slave master told them. "I recommend that you wear them. When your name is called, enter the arena. If you refuse to enter on your own, you will be dragged out by whatever means necessary. Good luck, gladiators." The slave master and his entourage soon left, and only the 2 cell guards remained. There was a sudden silence outside, then a scream, followed by cheers. "What's happening?" Carmen asked the young elven captive. 2 Highland barbarians were fighting. Now there is only one left standing, their chief, I believe. What do they face? Prepare yourself first, woman. Sometimes they take people before they can arm themselves. The equipment is along the far wall. Moving quickly, she saw that her friends were already picking through the odd pieces of arms that were available. It has been an honor, Carmen, Leander said. I would never have wanted it any other way. We are not dead yet, she replied, slipping a rusty suit of mail over her head. We have been in worse scrapes than this. I wish that I was so optimistic, Kalor said. I have learned many new spells, but I think that the general has no intention of letting us live. You're right, Kalor, Dow said. He just hopes that we might last a little longer. For a greater spectacle, Tarek agreed. The power of the runes escapes me, D'Artin observed, while testing the weight of a sword. There is something strange about this place. We can only hope that your magic will work in the arena. Suddenly, a great roar erupted from the crowd. The barbarian chief has fallen, the young elf said. Soon they will call out the next combatants. Dressed and armed, they moved alongside of him and peered into the arena. What is your name, elf? Kerr asked. I remember him, Karina said. He was one of Baron Dutching's soldiers. I am Brent of the Crumbling Cliffs, he replied. I was with Baron Dutchings when Nordtown fell. Who is that one? Kerr said, pointing to the opposite side of the cage. And why is he naked? A lone elf sat cross-legged there. His body was covered in scars. Even his face, once fair, bore the brunt of many battles. He was wearing only a loincloth. His feet were bare, his hands heavily calloused, and his body lean. His head was shaved bare, and torn stumps were all that were left of his ears. His eyebrows, if ever he had any, were now simply a mass of scars. His eyes were ocean blue, large and piercing. He is Kolren, son of Garad, lord of the Berserks. He will not wear armor against foes that he feels are unequal to his skill, even if it costs him his life. My father once told me a story, Tarek said, of an ancient tribe of elves who lived like nomads on the northern steppes. It was said that their horsemanship was surpassed only by their ferocity. They were so savage that even death feared to claim their fallen spirits, for even in the afterlife they fight on. They disappeared over a century ago, and no one knows what happened to them. Kolren, son of Garad, come forth, a commanding voice introduced. The arena gate opened. 4 heavily armed orcs flanked the passage leading outside. The battered elf stood, taking up a pair of swords that he had leaned against the wall beside him. More than walk, he flowed, his every movement controlled, balanced, and yet without conscious effort. Fight well, Kolren, the largest orc said. I will miss you, Twisted Fang. It has been an honor, the orc answered. When he entered the arena, the cheers of 40,000 spectators filled the air, but he heard none of it. His heart was filled with the song of his people, the battle song of a lost race. Its rousing rhythm filled him with strength far beyond normal limits, allowing him to block out pain and drive his body to superhuman limits. Going into battle for perhaps the last time, he promised his father that he would know no fear, and his mother that he would see her soon. Standing proudly, he awaited his next opponent. He had long ago forgotten the day of his birth, and he knew not what season it was. He had been a captive and a slave since childhood. His memories still held on to what were important, things like his mother's face and the face of the one who had killed his father. The great gates of the arena opened then, and the floor of the Colosseum trembled as Kolren's gargantuan adversary entered. When the crowd saw who would face him, their cheering was like the crashing surf of a stormy sea. Kolren, son of Garad. Okay. Finally, I come face to face with thee, Kolren, the Titan Uzul exclaimed. I have waited 500 years to destroy the house of Garad. I am all that remains, Titan, and by my blood oath I swear that you shall fall. Your father died easily by my sword. His head adorned my lodgepole for 100 years. My father was exhausted from battle when you stabbed him in the back. You lie. Nay, I was but a child of 7 seasons, held flat beneath my mother's dying body, helpless but to watch when you then slew my father like a coward. You will pay for your insults, son of Garad. Prepare to die. You cannot kill a soul that has died 1,000 times, Titan. You will see. Moving with the speed of a hunting leopard, he sidestepped behind one of the arena's great stone pillars and waited, with his blades held low. With each step of Uzul's feet, the ground shook. He was enraged, and perhaps even a little embarrassed, which only made his anger grow with every breath. In size, he was among the largest of his kind, soaring to over 25 feet in height. Kolren was little more than a tiny child to him, indeed, little more than an insect. Kolren, an elf of the northern steppes, weighed no more than 150 pounds, while Uzul weighed easily 20 times that. Juggernauts from ancient times, most of his race were giants of a kind and gentle nature. Greed and desire would sometimes tempt them, but most would never call an elf their enemy. Uzul was not one of these types of titans. Immortal, unless they meet some untimely end, Titan were among the first creations of the gods. Uzul was one of the first of these, but his heart was corrupted by greed, and later driven to evil by the words of a cunning elf of the underworld. He became a tool, a powerful pawn at the head of Lothia's ancient army. In time, his soul was bathed in blood, rewarded with gold and jewels until his own people were long forgotten, and only his evil desires remained. It was this kind of Titan that Kolren now faced, one tiny elf of the north against an adversary proven in battle for 10,000 years. "Where are your people now?" Uzul provoked. "You are all alone in a city of enemies, and your people are memories and dust. They were too weak to survive, yet Uzul remains." "Then your task remains undone, for Kolren, son of Garad, elf of the wandering nation, still remains. Very soon you will join them." Charging with surprising speed, he slammed into the back of the great pillar protecting Kolren, 10 feet thick and 3 stories tall. Its marble stood polished and glistening, rising from the arena floor with 20 of its brethren spaced throughout. It had withstood centuries of gladiatorial games, but even its massive strength was no match for Uzul. It cracked, shattered, and toppled. Dust filled the air, obscuring vision, and Uzul raised his giant sword for the killing stroke. When the dust had settled, Kolren wasn't there. "Ha ha ha," Uzul laughed. "It seems that you've been crushed flat. That was too easy." The crowd greeted his swift victory with loud boos. Their spectacle was stolen. There was no gore and no pain-filled screams to satisfy their lust for blood. "What an outrage," a wealthy merchant commented. 25 drachmas, and this is the great sport that Vlad has promised? Thank goodness I didn't bet on this match." "I just lost 100 on the elf," his comrade said. "I've never seen him lose before. It was inevitable. The Lyosulfar was old." "No, wait. Look there, at the opposite end of the arena, crouching low. It's him." And indeed it was, for there was Kolren, alive and well, and completely unscathed. By Lothia's hand, I never would have believed it. "Another 100 on the elf," he said to the bookkeeper. If Uzul had known that his victory was not yet assured, then he might not have been so quick to celebrate. As it was, the crowd told him with their hushed silence and then their cheers. He barely had time to turn. Kolren struck him on the run. In the span of 4 great strides, his blades lashed out 8 times, slashing Uzul's feet and ankles, and his retreat was even swifter, almost faster than the eye could follow. Uzul roared in pain and disbelief. If his feet had been bare, Kolren's blows could have debilitated him, but his tall boots were fashioned from mammoth hide, thick, protective, and strong, and the elf's most powerful blows only stung him. His knees were protected by 2 great shields of adamant, his waist and groin by steel, and his body by a suit of mail adorned with 100 enemy skulls. His head was unprotected, save for a crop of flame-red hair and a tangled beard that had grown so long that he tucked it into his belt to control it. In anger, he swung his sword in a great swath all around himself, and 2 more pillars were laid low. "I'll destroy you," he screamed. He lay about himself, right and left, spinning, slashing, His sword was gargantuan, over 15 feet in length and 2 feet thick, and there were few mortal beings that could lift it even an inch, but Uzul swung it with ease. "Stand and fight me if you dare, little man. I do not fear you, Titan, nor did my father. We were 300 against 10,000, and if we were 300 more, the battle horn would have blown the other way. You ramble on because you know that death is near. I cannot see you, Kolren, but soon not a pillar will stand to hide you." Uzul then began to set about himself, laying all the pillars in the arena low. Luckily, they had been raised only to improve the spectacle of the countless battles that had been fought there since its creation. For if their presence were structural, then Uzul's blows would have brought the mountain down upon them all. One by one they fell or shattered, and with each swing, Uzul's maniacal rage grew. Where was his enemy? There was no doubt that he was hiding like a frightened mouse. Remove the brush or log that hides him, and he runs beneath another. Well, Uzul would see to it that not one log remained. The betting in the arena stands grew feverish. Kolren had become a huge favorite, an underdog survivor of over 100 contests. Riddled with scars, his skin reflected a life filled only with strife, and yet somehow he lived. Uzul, his giant opponent, was a veteran of countless wars and individual battles against all manner of beings and mythical beasts. They were both undefeated champions. If Kolren lost, he would be no more. Uzul could neither afford to lose his life nor his face before the incredible hosting of his allies. It truly was a match of the century. Commander Vlad had outdone himself. 500 drachmas on the elf, 1,000 upon Uzul, and so on it went. For each pillar that fell, 100 new bets were made. With each roar of titanic rage, the crowd's cheers grew. It was a deafening tumult, an adrenaline-charged spectacle the likes of which no one had ever before seen. Where was the elf? Pillars were falling everywhere, clouds of dust rising from the floor. Someone would exclaim that they'd seen him, or at least something moving about upon the floor. Was it Kolren, or just an eddying swirl of sand? What no one knew was that Kolren had never been in any of those places. It was not he moving about through the dusty clouds like a jaguar. It was not he tormenting Uzul from behind a pillar. He was no swirl of dust, no warrior phantom. He had, however, quietly, secretly, leaped onto Uzul's great skirt of mail and climbed like lightning, sight unseen, onto the Titan's immense shoulders, whispering in his ears, as if he was a shadowy cat just behind the next obstacle. He fed Uzul's anger, until his rage was itself like unto a real thing. One might ask how he remained hidden from the eyes of thousands of bloodthirsty fans, and one might answer that perhaps their eyes were all drawn to the spectacle of Uzul's incredible power, or maybe it was the fact that Kolren had crawled beneath the crimson mane of the giant, and no one save the resident fleas could have seen him. Whatever the case, Kolren continued his taunts, his whisperings, until the pillars were made rubble, and no stone big enough to hide a diminutive elf remained. He was the last of his people, both tough and cunning, a genius in the art of warcraft, and this was the final enemy whom he wished to face before accepting death. The revenge of his fallen race was finally within his reach. 6 feet away, Uzul breathed heavily. His voice was a slavering mess of confusion, his heartbeat pulsing hard through his veins. A short climb, one fatal cut, and Uzul's lifeblood would burst unquenchably. It would be over, the Titan's end. But Kolren knew that such a victory would be hollow. It would be brains over brawn, without honor, and he wouldn't do it, not that way. Resting for a time, he paused to remember his life and his home, and suddenly he longed to wander the steppes of that land again. His people were gone, but he knew where their spirits still lived. They walked the northern steppes, dancing beneath the stars, singing songs of love and of war, and these were songs that he still knew. His people lived on as long as he remained. He owed it to them to survive. He suddenly understood just how it might be possible. For the first time in 4 decades as a slave, he thought that he had a chance. Elrin von Mathers. Where could he be? D'Artagnan asked. I could have sworn that he was just behind the last pillar to fall. He may be beneath it, Leander answered. No way, Kerr said. That was too easy. I agree, Tarik said. He moves much too fast for that. But he might have been too hurt, Carmen guessed, and a little too slow. Wait, Kalo said. Someone comes. They watched the hall leading to their arena side cell. Some commotion was occurring among the guards just outside. Maybe the warden was coming to release them into the arena to sweeten the pot. All of them listened with dread, and the roar of the crowd seeming somehow distant and muffled. Prisoners, stand to the rear and receive your commander, their guard roared. Keys rattled, mechanisms cranked, and the door to the holding cells was opened. A tall, dark figure entered, silent save for the sound of his well-heeled soles striking the floor in a quiet, purposeful cadence. Carmen looked to her friends for courage, and they to her. When they looked toward the hall again, a familiar face greeted them. It was Vlad. I couldn't help but wondering what you thought of my little spectacle. You sick bastard, Carmen said. Now, I'll have none of that. Guards, leave us at once and secure the door. I'll call you when I am ready. Yes, Commander, the massive orc replied. The door soon shut with metallic finality, portending some great doom soon to befall them. Look closely, my friends, Vlad said, beneath the veil of the glamour that I have created. Elrin, Keylor exclaimed. But how? You, of all people, should know, Keylor. An illusion, of course, but a very powerful one. The Dark Elf are masters of magic, and many of their wards weaken my spell. I won't be able to keep it up for much longer. That's why I've combined magic with a detailed disguise, should my spells fail. Can you get us out of here? I have glimpsed an incident in my crystal ball that should help us all to escape. Be ready, for in a few minutes' time, an unexpected and momentous event will occur outside. Here, Kalo, take this package. Within it you will find a map of the tunnels beneath the arena. But how will we get through the cell doors, thou asked? Inside the package is a small set of picks. Kalo should be able to open the locks with them. The guard will be distracted. Subdue him and make for the tunnels. I have hidden your weapons and armor in a small chamber at the southern end of this hall. You must move through the passages with all due speed, for Vlad will soon discover your escape. But what of our families? Carmen said. I have a spy inside the fortress, Elrin explained. She has drugged the guards assigned to your loved ones' cells and freed them. They should already be waiting for you beneath the arena. Where do we go from there? Tarik asked. The tunnels will end in an ancient ruin in the deep mines. I will try to meet you there with my company. If I don't make it, head for the river. It'll be hard going, but at least it's a chance. You have no chance if you stay here. Hurry, the lock, Kilo. There is no time. I must go. And with that, the glamour that was Elrin faded, and only Vlad remained. Prepare to die, my friends. Uzul will need more blood to satisfy his thirst this night. His deep laughter was haunting, merciless, just like the man he was supposed to be. Open, guard. I may call for them when Uzul has finished with the Berserker Lord. Yes, Commander. And the door shut with a clank. Mechanisms tumbled, and the lock slid shut. Hurry, Keylor, Tarik said. Everyone, ready yourselves. We may never get another chance. Feels like a setup, Kerr warned. I don't trust that wizard. Setup or no, Dal observed. It seems like a fighting chance, at least. What's happening out there? Uzul has crushed every stone big enough to hide the elf, Carmen said. His mouth is coated with white froth from rage. I can't see Kolren anywhere. Kalor, Kerr said. I've almost got it. There, it's done. Can you see the guard? Tarik said. Yes, his back's turned to watch the arena. Get ready and to head for the door. Vanamoinen, protect me, Carmen prayed. The Titan is talking to himself. Not himself, Karina said. To Kolren. I can see his right boot. The crazy wanderer has climbed the giant and is speaking in his ear. Tarik, it looks like we're about to get that break. Okay, read a little bit more. Wanderer's Revenge. Uzul, Kolren whispered. I am here. Where are you, cursed one? Here. Can you not feel my steel against your throat? What? I will crush you flat like a fly upon my forehead. Then we will join each other in death. Your tiny swords cannot kill me. My sword rests beside your heartbeat. Can you not feel it? I, Uzul stammered, I can. Then by the gods, you are going to take me outside to the light of day, or we both are going to die here and now. They'll never let you escape. No, but you'd better see to it that I do. He pressed his point, and Uzul gasped in pain. He knew that he'd finally lost a battle. Now quickly, to the great door. It was then that the crowd realized that something was terribly wrong. The great commanders were shouting orders to mobilize their troops and secure doorways and so on. The bookkeepers were holding all bets until one of the combatants was proven defeated. It was too little too late, because Uzul was only 10 giant strides from the tremendous double doors that exited the arena and led to the great hall. The doors were built like all those in the Colosseum, of giant cedar trunks bound in adamant and riveted with iron, but even they couldn't withstand the pommel stroke of a Titan. In one incredible blow, the 4-foot-thick timber that secured the door's opposite side was shattered, and the pathway was opened. Don't let them escape alive, the crowd heard their commander say. Bring them down, if you must bring the whole mountain down upon them. It was the most opportune moment. All the battalions had gathered in the arena to witness the match of the century. They were unarmored and without weapons, drunk and full, their leaders even drunker. By the time specific orders were given, Uzul was 100 yards closer to the front doors of the pyramid. The great hall was a straight tunnel of immense size. It was built to allow even the largest of beings to enter the compound, or in the case of a captive dragon or perhaps a titan, the arena. It was a weakness of sorts, a way for an enemy army to penetrate the defenses, and because of this, all sorts of siege weaponry was set and ready for defense. Yet on this day, there were only a few of the lowest-ranking souls left to man them, and these soldiers were more than a little surprised to see Uzul. "My lord Uzul," they asked, "where are you headed in such a hurry?" "Open the gates," Uzul commanded, for even he couldn't breach the mighty portal that sealed the pyramid shut. They were accustomed to him giving orders, and so, even though it seemed strange, they did as he commanded, partly because they were of little rank and partly because they were terrified. The great winch began to groan, and the doors slowly opened. Uzul put forth his might to them, and they swung faster. "Stop them!" the dark commander screamed from down the hall. "They must not escape. Bring the mangonels to bear." The terrible defenses were hastily readied. Their mechanisms cranked. The devices swung into position. Uzul was nearly through the gates when their destruction was unleashed from behind him. The mangonels were devastating. What they lacked in accuracy, they possessed in firepower, and 1,000 bars were launched from them all at once. The soldiers at the gates were pierced through in 100 places, the walls barraged, and Uzul was stung countless times. He was a Titan, and the greatest of beings, but even he couldn't have withstood the onslaught without his armor. 50 bolts struck his boots, but the mammoth hide withstood the brunt of them. His thighs received the worst punishment, and 20 bolts struck him where his mail didn't reach. His back was lashed hundreds of times, and 50 enemy skulls were shattered. His chain mail dented, but somehow his flesh and his heart below remained unharmed. The elf at his throat would surely have been slain, if not for Uzul's great mane, for so thick it was that not one arrow passed through it to harm him. Uzul strode on. That's where we'll end today's episode 33. When we return, we'll see if Kolren and Uzul escape the pyramid, and see if Carmen and her rangers do as well. And as always, read The Drums of Doom, Part 2 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga by me. Thank you and have a great night.